Before I give you my thoughts concerning the album Scraps by NRBQ, I feel compelled to present you with two warnings. The first concerns language. As you might have noticed, I tagged this particular episode of my funny little music show with an explicit tag. While I pride myself on my perspicacity, I also know that there are times when more direct language can express a particular point most effectively. This video contains such a case. So be forewarned, exactly one F-bomb will be dropped in the course of this video. The second warning is by far more dire. You see, as I listen to these albums, most of my understanding comes from learning not only how the music sounds, but also how it's played. To aid in this understanding and consequently to serve as an opening and closing theme each week, what I do is pick a song that is likely to be recognized by fans of the album. Then I find a way to interpret that song in a unique way, such as my bluegrass version of Elvis Costello's Allison, and of course last week's Tejano version of Neil Young's Heart of Gold. This week, for reasons I cannot explain nor excuse, my mind fixated on the idea of an a cappella version of the song Magnet, and no amount of brainstorming could displace that idea. So as a necessary result, I had no choice but to record myself singing three-part harmony. I urge all of you not to panic. First of all, the intro music lasts only 30 seconds, and such minimal exposure should have no long-lasting negative effects on most healthy adults. But as a service to those of you with a more sensitive constitution, I will provide you with a countdown before the music starts. This will give you an opportunity to mute your speakers or unplug your headphones. Once you see me sit down with the mic in front of me and the opening captions fade, the music will be over and you can safely raise the audio volume and view the rest of the program normally. Thank you for your patience and your understanding, and good luck. Music begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm like a magnet, you're like a piece of wood. Can't get together, don't make me feel so good. I'm like a convict, you're like the FBI. I ask for breakfast, you bring a piece of pie. I know it's useless to say how it used to be. Why do you treat me this way if you could only see? NRBQ, the new rhythm and blues quartet. Where to begin? Well, after college, I became a fan of all manner of outsider music, including the song poems on the Beat of the Traps album, along with the rest of the MSR Madness recordings, compiled by NRBQ drummer Tom Ardolino. To this day, I still get Gene Marshall's Jimmy Carter Says Yes and Bill Joy's How Long Are You Staying stuck in my head. In fact, just the other day, while watching the new CNN documentary Jimmy Carter Rock and Roll President, all during the section involving his campaign, in my head, I was hearing, "Can our government be competent? Jimmy Carter says yes. Jimmy Carter says yes." At the time, I had no idea who Tom Ardolino was. I thought maybe he might be like the Underground's version of Alan Lomax, which maybe he was, come to think of it. And next, well, about a decade ago, I became a fan of the Shags when the keyboardist for the Yeti Trio, my friend Brooks Smith,
This is Audible,
sent me a link to the song Philosophy of the World. I became obsessed with the Shags. I listened to the John Ronson radio documentary on them a dozen times. I was thrilled when Dot Wiggin released her solo album Ready, Get, Go. I even named our new cat Foot Foot. And I learned that NRBQ's keyboardist, Terry Adams, was responsible for the re-release of the Shags album in 1980, introducing them to a new generation. After that, well, thanks to my interest in critical thinking and the skeptic movement in general, I became a fan of Penn and Teller beyond just their magic. I started consuming most of Penn Jillette's radio and podcast output, and as a result, I started hearing many stories about Penn's friend from Massachusetts, NRBQ bassist Joey Spampanato. And perhaps oddest of all, I learned that my ex's grandfather married a woman who was the mother-in-law of a member of a band from Kentucky that turned out to be NRBQ. When you combine all of these factors, it puts me in a weird spot. I now know a fair amount about NRBQ from several different sources, but I've never heard any of their music. How I could have let this much coincidence pile up over the years without ever giving them an honest listen is kind of shocking. Inexcusable, really. But there's a problem. Unlike the other music on my list, I didn't have a clear album in mind. All their output is new to me. I had no idea where to start with the music of NRBQ. Know how I eventually decided where to start? I climbed onto a popular music subscription service and I looked at which song by NRBQ had the highest number of counted listens. It turned out to be a song called Magnet from their 1972 album Scraps. Well, that's as good a place as any. Let's get started. "14 songs in less than 42 minutes. That's a lot of material in a short amount of time. So what's up first? Let's see. The first song's called Howard Johnson's Got His Hojo Workin'. So my first thought is, okay, that's an amazing title. And my next thoughts, that's a killer riff. That clav sounds amazing. That's a huge sound. Who are these guys? Next song, Magnet. Catchy as pink eye in a preschool. Jaunty and clever. Dig it. Okay, next song. Don't Knock at My Door. Nice little pop blues tune. Tight enough to have come from Taj Mahal and Jesse Ed Davis. Groovy. Who are these guys? As I continue through the album, I'm just struck again and again. Okay, look at the songwriting. Only You, for example, sounds like it's the very best thing you ever heard from the Lovin' Spoonful. And I love the Lovin' Spoonful. Plus it has a solo on a toy piano. All right, now let's look at execution. It's Not So Hard is such a perfectly realized post-Beatles / pre-Cheap Tricks / not Badfinger tune. I honestly am shocked at the fact that it's not the biggest hit of 1972. Okay, let's look at the musicianship. Al Anderson's Telecaster work is just killer all the way through this album. From Chicken Pickin' to Steve Cropper on a dime. Plus, Terry Adams is a freaking monster. Damn impressive. And what about memorable riffs? How in the name of all that's reasonable is it even possible that nobody anywhere ever thought of the riff for Get a Grip before? Yeah! No, really, who are these guys? After listening a couple times, it strikes me that the weakest tracks on this album would be the strongest tracks for most 70s rock bands. I could easily see someone like April Wine or Mother's Finest having a huge hit with Ain't It All Right, for example. Really, I don't have much more to say other than I'm really looking forward to learning this album inside and out. So let's go. This album is fucking delightful. It just is. Everything I'm hearing, all 14 tracks, it all reinforces again and again that this album is about the joy of making music. Let me see if I can break that down to illustrate precisely what I mean here, because it's a very nuanced point. Okay, so to begin my analogy, let's talk a little bit about movies. There's a certain kind of happiness that I get from watching certain kind of movies that most people refer to as bad movies. I don't mean like Justice League or the Emoji Movie, movies that have had any chance of fun or innovation boiled out of them by a committee and test viewed to death. No, I mean movies like Plan 9 from Outer Space, or Manos the Hands of Fate, or Birdemic Shock and Terror. Movies made inexpertly but still communicating the joy of filmmaking. That's the same kind of joy I get when listening to a lot of outsider music. Things by Danger Woman or Daniel Johnston or Wesley Willis. And that same kind of joy persists for me in listening to song poems. But the amazing thing about song poems is that you have completely insane people as the source of the material, combined with perfectly executed music by professional, competent musicians. It's the only place in the world that I know of in any artistic medium where the end product is equal parts complete nuts and complete professional. Before I go on, let me be clear about one thing. I make a distinction between works made in earnest and those made cynically. There's a difference between, for example, The Room and Sharknado. If you make a movie and your motive is, I'm going to make a bad movie, isn't that clever? Or if you write a song and your intent is, I'm going to make outsider music, isn't that clever? Then you're not starting from that place of honesty. You're creating snark and not joy, and you hear it in the results. And that difference, the difference between snark on one hand and joy on the other, that's the thing I hear from NRBQ. Aside from all four of them being amazing musicians, they also bring so much joy and playfulness to this music. This, to me, is what Frank Zappa meant by does humor belong in music? It's what differentiates NRBQ from folks like Steely Dan. At no point listening to Scraps did I ever get a feeling of condescension or aloofness. It's just four musicians having a good time, writing songs about whatever makes them happy. Not just love and heartbreak, and also not arch remembrances of distant conversations about philosophy and drugs with the cats from the university that summer that Rudy dropped out. And maybe that's why the critics keep calling NRBQ the world's best bar band. While I'd love to hear them in a bar, and would have if I could have, NRBQ doesn't fit with the idea of a bar band to me. When was the last time you saw a bar band whip out a kazoo or a toy piano? And I honestly think that most music aficionados have gotten so inured to songs expressing themselves in giant, bombastic strokes, songs of the depths of heartbreak, and even banal "Wanna Rock You All Night" anthems over and over. So what happens when a band comes along that actually sounds like it's having a good time? When they come up with something as original, playful, and ridiculously catchy as "Who Put the Garlic in the Glue," they have to relegate it to somehow being less than serious, less deserving of being thought of alongside more elevated music. It's the same reason we'll never have a comedy win the Best Picture Oscar. Well, based on just this one album, I can tell you I'm a fan. This isn't a bar band. This isn't a novelty act. This isn't comedy music. This is a musical, creative, competent, and completely joyous band. We need some more like that, especially now.